Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 143 of the podcast. Thank you for your patience. A little over a week off we took. Totally my fault because I went away on vacation up to the mountains in North Carolina. Had a great time, but I want to get into that just yet because I need to introduce my co-host. By the way, today is Monday, June the 10th, for those of you keeping track. We usually record on Sundays, but I just got home today and, had a little something to eat. And here I am because you guys have been asking for the shows. I do appreciate everyone who complains to me when we don't post an episode because that means that you enjoy the content. And I promise all of you, I will give you double your money back for not producing a show last week. In any case, there can't be a show without my trusty co-host all the way from humid and sticky New Jersey, Jeff, the Animal Wilson. Jeff, how you feeling, kid? Sweating it out up there, huh? You're muted, Jeff.
My bad. So, forgot I was muted. So, Bill, the weather has been a little all over the place. This weekend was really nice, and then today it's been rainy, and now it's really humid. I think there are some storms in the Midwest, and we're getting some of the aftermath of that. But, Bill, how was your trip?
It was awesome, man. It was really great. I went unplugged, put the phone away for most of the trip. Skimmed through Instagram and Twitter here and there, but, for the most part, stayed away from social media. I barely caught the fights because I wasn't trying to watch TV or anything. Just, spending time with the family. It was a much needed getaway. It was our first big vacation with the baby, and she was awesome in the car. 1,400 miles we drove, Jeff. Stopping periodically because we didn't want to have her in the car for too long a period. Asheville is an awesome place, which is where we spent most of our time. We took small road trip breaks along the way and then on the way back. But Asheville is where we spent a little over a week. And if you're a fan of craft beer, I don't think there's a better place in the country that you can go than Asheville, North Carolina. There's just within the city of Asheville alone, I think there's 26 breweries, and in the surrounding towns, you go into some of the mountain towns and stuff like that. There's even more, and there's some big name ones out there. Oscar Blues, which makes Dale's Pale Ale, and New Belgium is out there. Of course, the makers of Fat Tire and Voodoo Ranger. Who else? Sierra Nevada, one of our favorite of the show. And, these breweries that I'm mentioning, the bigger name ones that you guys probably will recognize, they didn't start in Asheville. They started in other places like Oscar Blues started in Colorado. Sierra Nevada started in California. But it's just the perfect place to have a brewery because you have that mountain water and you have all the tourism from the Biltmore estates and everything like that. And it's a pretty hipstery area. And you know how all these hipster kids are so into craft beer. And that's one thing we happen to have in common. So 17 breweries in total, Jeff, that I visited. That includes 2 in Macon, Georgia on my way up. 1 distillery, which distilled rum and gin and coffee liqueur, and 1 winery on the way back. You gotta taper it off on the way back. Jeff, can't just be pounded beers all the time. So I think in total, we would go. There was 4 of us, so we would go to a brewery and order 2 flights of beer and just kind of taste everything. I think overall, I tried like 200 beers, something like that. So there's a lot of information to digest there. Obviously, this is partly an alcohol-based podcast as well as an MMA podcast. But I was talking to you last night, Jeff. What I decided to do is make a separate episode for those who are interested in the craft beer scene and just talk about all the different breweries I went to. I haven't decided how I'm going to structure it yet. Maybe I'll give you my top 5 and then some honorable mentions of some good ones. I mean, pretty much everywhere was amazing. There's good food everywhere. They have food trucks or there's a great restaurant next door where you can get takeout and bring it into the brewery and stuff like that. And then you can just do a walking tour. If you park in downtown Asheville, you can actually walk to like 12 breweries that are just within a couple of blocks of each other. It's really an awesome experience, and I really want to tell you guys about it. But I do realize that not everybody tunes in for the alcohol talk. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to do a separate episode for those who are interested. I have all my notes on every brewery I visited. I have my favorite beers that I tried the entire time. What I will do, Jeff, I have this beer that I brought back from New Belgium, and it's a sour. And I'm not a fan of sour beers. I'm going to say that up front. So if you like sours and you don't like what I have to say about it, don't take it with a grain of salt, because I don't have a flavor palate for sour beers. I don't like sour things. I don't like very fruity things. I don't like very sweet things. That's just my palate. I'm just one guy. So it's just like my opinions on MMA, Jeff. You don't have to take everything I say as fact. Like sometimes I'm just giving opinions. So this is from New Belgium, and it's aged in apple whiskey barrels, and it's a golden apple sour. It's called Felix. It is 8.8% alcohol, and it's basically like fermented in the bottle. So what happens is it naturally carbonates while it's bottled. So it's aged for like 14 months. I forget what they say. A true sour has to be aged for 14, 18 months, something like that, Jeff. I could be totally making that fact up, but that's my understanding. So it's kind of corked like a champagne bottle. For those of you watching on YouTube, you could see this, and Jeff, you can see this as well. So I'm going to uncork this thing. Hopefully I don't hit myself in the face as I do it here. I'm not a big like champagne guy, so I don't do this very often. I will admit my inexperience here, and there we go. That sounds beautiful. It sounds nice. It sounds fancy. It smells disgusting.
Hopefully it tastes better than that.
Yeah. All right, so a little lighter than I anticipated. It does look like a golden apple. Because it was aged in the whiskey barrels, I was expecting it to be a little darker, but it's a nice like golden lager color. Okay, you can see it's foaming like a motherfucker, because that's the fermentation and the carbonation of the sour fruit. I don't actually know why I chose this one to live taste. I think because I brought a bunch of beer back with me, Jeff, and this was just the coolest bottle, and it was at the front of my fridge after I unpacked everything. So I was like, I'm going to do this one, even though I don't particularly enjoy sours. Although I do have to say, I will try the sours. If I go into the brewery, I always ask the bartender, what are your top beers? What are the most popular things? That's what I want to try. And a lot of them are saying sours because they're very trendy right now. I can't understand why, but if that's the number one thing that people are into, I'm going to at least give it a shot. And I hated the sours everywhere except New Belgium, because they weren't too tart where they like, pinch the sides of your cheeks when you take a sip of it. They were actually pretty smooth. And that's why I kind of had high hopes for the one that's aged in the whiskey barrels, because I think maybe it'll mellow out some of that tartness. I don't know if tartness is a word, but it felt right.
All right, Bill, what do we got?
It tastes kind of like apple cider.
Okay.
Not too bad.
Good.
Not too bad. It's not my thing. This is not something I would regularly drink, but it's very refreshing. It's kind of like an apple cider champagne, and it's not too sour. It's not like too tart, so I can actually deal with this. I could actually, I could actually probably finish this bottle while we're doing the episode here. And I drove a long time today, so by the time I get to the end of this bottle, who knows what's going to be coming out of my mouth here, Jeff? We had a lot of MMA to talk about, so I could actually sip on this. This is actually very nice. The wood flavors really mellow out the sour, shitty taste that I hate. I'm not. There was always like that weird kid in school that would just eat Sour Patch Kids and just like suck all the sour shit off of them, and then throw the wet jelly part at people because they were a fucking weirdo. Everybody knows that kid.
Yeah.
I was not that kid. So I did not grow up enjoying the taste of sour things. But this is actually pretty nice, Jeff. This is as close to enjoying champagne as I will ever get. I fucking hate champagne. I don't understand why it's a thing. Whenever I go to a wedding and they pour you the champagne, I'm like, I'll toast with a beer. Thank you very much. Or or scotch or whatever. It depends on like how good the wedding is that I'm going to. And I definitely judge weddings by the bar. If it's a cash bar, go fuck yourself. Don't invite me. No. I don't care. You're gonna make me blow a whole Saturday, and then I gotta pay for drinks like I'm at a no. We can't be friends. Can't be friends. Anyway, Jeff, I know I've gone off on a tangent here. Sour beer, New Belgium, Felix, aged in apple whiskey barrels. Not bad. I also decided, Jeff, I've come up with a rating system for beers and breweries, and I'll get into that when we do the episode on that. But I think big things are in the works here. I think maybe a beer blog, top beer cities I've been to. A lot of fun stuff. I like beer, but I'm probably going to take a break from beer after this past week and the 200 something beers that I've sampled, including the sours that I choked down. All right. Speaking of choking, let's talk about some mixed martial arts. And I'll turn it over to you, Jeff. Where do you want to start? I mean, we had Saturday night UFC 238, and then the previous week we had Fight Night 153 from Stockholm. I don't really care if we go in chronological order or not. We can bounce back and forth for all I care. The people have been demanding a show, so we'll give them a show however we please. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, Bill, I'll be honest with you. I kind of wanted to start with UFC 238. I think it's fresher in everybody's mind, and it delivered, man. The card was stacked, and I think that, excuse me, a lot of these fighters delivered, especially the co-main event and the Tony Ferguson versus Donald Cerrone fight. I think those were the three I was looking forward to the most, and they were exciting, man. There was no there was a little bit of controversy, but I think it was nonstop action. I don't think anybody was really bored during any of those three fights. So, Bill, let's get into Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes here, because Marlon Moraes starting out so well, using his leg kicks, excuse me, dominating the striking department. And it looked like, honestly, Bill, I thought that Marlon Moraes was going to finish the fight via leg kicks. I thought we were going to see that. I thought Henry Cejudo was his movement was definitely compromised, especially in that second round. You could see he was moving really sluggish, really hesitant to use his wrestling, because Moraes was doing a good job of stopping the takedowns until sometime in the second round. Moraes just kind of got exhausted. I think we've talked about this before, where he has a huge weight cut. He cuts a lot of weight to make 135, and I think that he was expecting this fight to go the way his last couple fights have gone, against Jimmy Rivera and Aljamain Sterling, where he was able to finish them in round one. I think that he underestimated Cejudo a little too much. I think that Moraes just thought that it was going to be a one-round snoozer, but Cejudo, man, using that plum clinch in the second round and just kneeing Marlon Moraes as hard as he could, kneeing his head, his body. And then in the third round, Moraes had nothing left, and Cejudo got it done. So, Bill, what did you think about Henry Cejudo? Oh, and Bill, I forgot to mention, not a lot of people know this, but Henry Cejudo, former Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling.
He's still a gold medalist, Jeff. Not former. Once a gold medalist, always. Yeah, gold medalist in Beijing, in freestyle wrestling. Henry Cejudo. For those of you who didn't know, he's pretty humble about it. He doesn't like to bring it up. No, man. Here's the thing. A lot of people shit on Henry Cejudo because he's like a cornball, and his interviews are always pretty cringeworthy. He's got like, kind of a weird, like, Oompa Loompa Mario Lopez vibe going on. And it's hard to take him serious, but make no mistake, this is a bad motherfucker. I mean, this is a world-class combat athlete. A gold medal in wrestling is no joke. By far the most credentialed wrestler to ever set foot in an MMA cage. Until the day Jordan Burroughs decides to set foot to try out MMA, he'll probably stay with that status. So this fight was reminiscent of his fight with Demetrius Johnson. For those of you may remember, Demetrius Johnson used to fight in the UFC. Former, that's a former. You could say, Jeff.
Yeah, he was the first flyweight champion.
Yeah, you can never lose a gold medal, but you can lose a championship belt. So that first fight with Demetrius Johnson, where he had that freak injury with his ankle in the first round, and it looked like he was just done. And he was able to dig deep and come back and find a way to beat Mighty Mouse and make those adjustments in the corner. And he did the same thing against Marlon Moraes. He got in his corner, and his coaches gave him some very sound advice. They said, look, you're standing in the pocket too long. You need to move in and out. You need to get your shots off and get out of there. And he went in there in that second round. He made those adjustments. He started utilizing that clinch, and it may have looked like something that Marlon Moraes should have been able to get out of, because he's a very efficient Muay Thai fighter, but not everybody trains in the clinch, and clinching with an Olympic gold medalist is not like clinching with a normal human being. Even though he looks like a goofball and he sounds like a goofball, that's a strong fucking dude in there that's holding your head down and pinning your chin to your chest and kneeing you in the gut. And that wore Marlon out. It wasn't just the weight cut. He was taking a lot of body shots in that clinch. And Cejudo was able to just be really fast and move in and out. And he showed that he has a lot more tools than just his wrestling. He didn't even need his wrestling. I don't think he was even fully committing to any takedowns. I think he was just kind of grabbing them up to throw off Marlon's rhythm, because he didn't want to let him get in a rhythm with his strikes like he was doing in the first round. I thought it was an awesome game plan by Henry Cejudo. I thought he made all the right adjustments. He made all the right moves. He showed once again that he's a very intelligent fighter in there. He's able to take information from his corner and process it and put it to use in a fight where he was getting his ass whipped. Like you said, those leg kicks. Marlon Moraes was sending his leg into the third row a couple of times. And he was able to come out there and make the adjustments to avoid that. Not only avoid that, but get a TKO victory at the end of the third round. I thought, it was a beautiful second and third round from Henry Cejudo. And we've seen this from him before, where he's had to dig deep after a rough first round and getting hurt. His fight with Demetrius Johnson, he was even injured. And I think going into this fight, he had an ankle sprain, which is why he had those ankle braces on. So man, just a tough dude, man. There's nothing like the work ethic of a wrestler. Anybody who's ever spent any time in a wrestling room knows what kind of grind it is. And to be able to get to the Olympic level alone is such an achievement. And to win it, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys know or not, Henry Cejudo is a gold medalist. I feel like it's our duty to let people know, Jeff, because he's so humble about it. But in any case, yeah, Marlon Moraes, still one of the best motherfuckers out there. I wouldn't want to be the next guy to get in the cage with him. That's for sure. I would love to see Marlon Moraes and Pedro Munhoz next. That would be a fun fight, I think. Or maybe Marlon Moraes and Peter Yan. That could be good too. There's a lot of different pairings to make. The only pairing for Henry Cejudo, in my mind anyway, is Aljamain Sterling, who you were saying that there wasn't much controversy on this card, Jeff. I think the controversy was the fact that Aljamain Sterling and Pedro Munhoz were on the prelims when Peter Yan and Jimmy Rivera were on the main card. I don't know what the fuck was going on with this decision making. It's got to be some kind of bullshit politics. But there's no excuse for this. I mean, this is a number one contender eliminator between Sterling and Munhoz. It was one of the best fights on the card. It was nonstop action the entire time and an amazing performance from Aljamain Sterling. So we're going to talk about it like it was a main card fight because that's what it fucking should have been. So let's go right there. Let's stick with the bantamweight division. Because like I said, we might bounce around a little bit because we have so much to cover. I was so impressed with Aljamain Sterling. The way he was fighting worried me a little bit. He was parrying kicks out way too far on Pedro Munhoz. Pedro was throwing those body kicks, and Aljo would parry out way far. And what that is from guys who throw a lot of kicks, that's a trap. When you see guys swimming their arms out way far like that, you feint the kick and then you come up over the top. And Munhoz did try to do that a couple of times, but luckily Aljo is so fast, he was able to duck underneath him. And, Aljo just countered pressure with pressure because Pedro's game plan was clearly to get in Aljo's face. And Aljo didn't back down. And Pedro Munhoz is the kind of guy where if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. And, Aljo put the gas pedal to the floor the entire fight. He looked phenomenal. And anyone who comes out of his gym will tell anyone who will listen that we have not even seen a glimpse of how bright this kid's star is. Just an animal in the gym and a real motivator and actually a really good coach at Longo Wyman on Long Island. So just a spectacular win for him. It should definitely be a title shot next. The only other thing maybe is a fight with Dominic Cruz, perhaps, because, he's been calling him out for so long, but Dominic Cruz has been on the sidelines for so long. I don't know what that would even do for him. And we don't know what Cejudo is going to do because he's got titles in two divisions. He's got a bit of a conflict with Frankie Edgar. So if Frankie Edgar were to beat Max Holloway, Cejudo has already said he wants to challenge him for the featherweight title and become the first triple champ in the UFC. A lot of unanswered questions, but I think at the very least an interim title should be in the future for Aljamain Sterling. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Bill, I think you're absolutely right. Excuse me. I think Aljamain Sterling was an animal in there. His cardio held up. He was in Munhoz's face, not letting Munhoz, get his game plan going. And I think that we're watching Aljamain Sterling grow up, man. I feel like the last time he lost was the last time that I really was a little worried about where his career was going. And ever since then, he's kind of taken off and just never looked back. This is, I think, his 6th win straight or something in the bantamweight division. Actually, I'm sorry. I forgot about the loss to Marlon Moraes. I'm not counting that because Marlon Moraes has basically beat everybody who's been in his path here. So I'd love to see Sterling against either Cejudo. I think he's deserving of that title shot. Pedro Munhoz, after that win over Cody Garbrandt, I think you could argue for him to get a title shot. And now that Sterling beat him, just using MMA math here, which doesn't always work, but I think in this situation it does. I think Sterling versus Cejudo could happen, or Sterling versus Dominic Cruz, who, as you know, Bill, I'll always tell you is the greatest bantamweight of all time.
I
um,
I know you will.
but yeah, I don't think you go wrong either way, man. I think Sterling's stock is skyrocketing here. And I agree, man. I don't know why this is on the prelims. I think that if anything, put Tai Tuivasa and Blagoy Ivanov as a prelim. I mean, um, I didn't even find that fight very interesting. So, or make the main card 6 fights. But I think that Aljo, I think he's earned a little bit more than that in this bantamweight division. So yeah, I think Cejudo winning this title, Bill, breathed some new life into the bantamweight division because there was an issue with TJ Dillashaw. He'd already beaten Cody Garbrandt twice. We didn't know what was going on with Dominic Cruz. Now this mixes up the division just a little bit here.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've got guys like Corey Sandhagen coming up. You still have you got Uriah Faber making a comeback. He's gonna be fighting Ricky Simone pretty soon for some reason. And yeah, Cody Garbrandt, I think I said already. And John Lineker is always dangerous matchup for anybody. I think this division has made TJ Dillashaw a distant memory. Like, he's already been forgotten. I think a lot of the fans have kind of written him off, because of the cheating stuff. And, I guess rightfully so. I mean, the guy got to a certain point by not doing the right thing. Let's stick with this bantamweight division though, real quick. Here's the fight that should have been on the prelims, and that was Peter Yan versus Jimmy Rivera. I don't understand why this was on the main card over Aljo and Pedro Munhoz. I just don't get it. I also am not fully understanding the hype train that is Peter Yan. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I get it politically. They're trying to get into other markets and they want, superstars who come from other countries. But I I think he's looked good against the top competition, but I just feel like he's not ready for that spotlight, I guess. He looked okay against John Dodson. He looked great against Jimmy Rivera, considering like almost nobody beats Jimmy Rivera. And now he's lost 3 in a row. So you got to kind of wonder if there's something psychological going on there, or if it's just, the competition is that good in this bantamweight division. Speaking of which, Rafael Sunsao is still out there too. He's another one I left out when we're talking about the bantamweights out there. So this division is definitely very stacked. But Peter Yan, I thought he looked good, considering Jimmy Rivera is a tough fighter. His boxing looked very crisp, very clean. I don't know if he has the knockout power to put down some of these upper echelon guys. I feel like he needs to grow and develop a little bit more. And I don't really understand him being on the main card here, especially over Aljamain and Pedro. Give me your thoughts on that one, Jeff.
Bill, I got to disagree with you on this one. I think that Peter Yan, I was really impressed with his performance, man. Knocking down Jimmy Rivera, I think once every round, basically. Mixing it up really well. His wrestling was really good. Jimmy Rivera did a good job of not being taken down, but I don't think that makes Peter Yan's grappling ineffective. I think that Peter Yan, I think that his grappling is essentially what won him this fight, because Jimmy Rivera was just exhausted by the end of this. And I just think Peter Yan mixes it up really well. I agree. I think he's still a little bit young, but I think that he's going to make a really big splash. Maybe I'm jumping on the hype train, but I just, his cardio is good. I don't see anything that he's really lacking. I think that his performance against Jimmy Rivera, I don't think that it's any small feat by any means. I think that that is a huge feather in his cap. Jimmy Rivera, very tough dude. As you can see, he couldn't even get knocked out. So yeah, I don't know, Bill. I think you're downplaying Peter Yan just a little bit, but at the same time, I'm kind of on this hype train. I've been impressed with him ever since I saw him. And I like that there's some new blood coming into the top ranks of the bantamweight division here.
Yeah, for sure. I don't doubt that Peter Yan could make a big splash in this division. I just feel like it's too soon for him to be fighting the top, the top 5 to 7 guys in this division, where Jimmy Rivera is, and he showed that he could definitely hang with those guys. I would argue that the first round should have been a 10-8 round for Peter Yan. I don't know why it wasn't, since he almost knocked Rivera out at the end of the round. And Chicago has adopted the new unified rules, which gives more lenient 10-8 rounds. So they need to figure this shit out. If you're adopting the rules, like go by them. You gotta have to use that judging criteria. That's another issue. I don't know, Jeff. I think it's this sour beer, man. Maybe it's just giving me.
It's making you sour. Yeah, that's the problem.
It's making me sour. I'm gonna wash it down with some whiskey right now. So this is, life is all about balance. So we got to take some sour stuff and balance it out. I got some Hillbilly 101 proof bourbon here, a little shooter. So I'll sip on this for a little bit. I'll try and wash out the sour grapes. I think I think my comments about Peter Yan are mostly based on my frustration that Aljamain Sterling and Pedro Munhoz were not on that main card, even though they're supposedly the top, 3 and 4 ranked bantamweights or whatever the rankings are. I don't pay too much attention to the rankings because they don't matter that much. All right. Somebody who has a right to be sour is Jessica Ai. Man, I felt so bad for her, and not just because of the finish, but that whole first round, Jeff. She was just completely outmatched by Valentina Shevchenko. And a lot of people are saying, like, who is in this division that can challenge her? And the answer may be nobody. But if I can skip ahead a little bit, the one name I think would be a problem for Valentina Shevchenko at 125 pounds is Jessica Andrade, the strawweight champion, who we know used to fight at bantamweight. She's a big strawweight. I think that she will definitely have plans to, if she holds on to the strawweight title, to move up to 125. And that's a fun fucking fight. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. This knockout of Jessica Ai was one of the most vicious knockouts I've ever seen in women's MMA and in MMA in general. I was watching this on my laptop in an Airbnb in Columbia, South Carolina, on my road trip back home Saturday night, which, side note, Columbia, South Carolina is the home of the world's largest fire hydrant. And that is literally the most exciting thing to see in Columbia, South Carolina. Don't ever go there.
Did it smell weird, Bill? Like, do a lot of dogs pee on it?
I didn't get that close to it. I drove by and took a picture, and I just put it in my Instagram story. I said, "This is the most exciting thing to see in Columbia, South Carolina," and it's a sad truth. It was a dead city. Capital of South Carolina, so the state capitol building's there. It's a beautiful building, but that and the fire hydrant. That's it. That's all they got. In any case, this head kick knockout was so impressive because it was an offbeat kick. She threw it on a half step. If you look at it slowed down, she takes a half step and loads this kick up, which means she didn't even get a full wind up on it. And that's what makes it so much more impressive, because you can't get your full power unless you take that full stutter step. She only took a half step, like a half beat, to throw this kick up, which is why it was so fast, which is why Jessica wasn't able to get her hands up. And this was one of those knockouts, Jeff, where it connected, and you heard the gasp of air come out of Jessica Eye, and she stiffened up before she even hit the ground. I was sitting there with my mouth open for a good 30 seconds, just in disbelief. I mean, it was pretty horrific knockout. You know, that that gasp of air that came out of her really sticks in my mind. It was really a grotesque sound. It was almost like her soul leaving her body. But yeah, Valentina Shevchenko is just a fucking machine, Jeff. I mean, I've been a big advocate for her as one of the top women's mixed martial artists for a long, long time. And man, she just took a girl in Jessica Eye, who's a former champion in other organizations, and it just made her look like she didn't even belong in there with her. Give me your thoughts on this fight, Jeff.
Yeah, dude, Jessica Eye, for lack of a better term, she got eaten alive in there, man. Valentina Shevchenko, dominant everywhere. The interviews, Jessica Eye was very confident in her wrestling, and that's great. But Valentina Shevchenko is no slouch in the grappling department. She tapped out. I forgot this girl's name. The Venezuelan vixen. I can't remember her name, but she won a season of The Ultimate Fighter, and she's a very, very good jiu-jitsu specialist. And Shevchenko tapped her out with an armbar. So I don't think that Shevchenko is a slouch anywhere. I think she's super well-rounded, and we saw that in the first round of this fight. She was able to dominate the feet. Jessica I could never get going. Shevchenko took her down pretty easily, with minimal effort, and had a really tight armbar at the end of that round. I think the belt definitely saved Jessica Eye, and Bill, that head kick. One, it was vicious. Like you said, it was kind of scary, seeing Jessica Eye laying there, and her body, her legs were shaking a little bit. It was scary, dude. Just, you knew she was out before she hit the ground.
Yeah.
It's really similar to another head kick knockout that we'll talk about from last week's card, with featuring Jimi Manuwa. But dude, I felt like Shevchenko's she's a machine, dude. Like, she could, I don't know, man. I don't know how to put this. She's just good everywhere. Like you said, I don't see anyone at 125 who is able to give her a challenge at the moment. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. And Bill, this reminded me of when John Jones knocked out DC in their second fight, because Shevchenko, she'd been hitting that left body kick in all throughout the first round, and you see when she throws that final head kick, Jessica Eye kind of lowers her hands, because right before that Shevchenko threw a kick to the body, so Jessica Eye must have thought that the second one was coming to the body and that she could block it. But Shevchenko went up north and just hit her right on the dome piece, as you would say, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was really scary. I don't see anyone in the flyweight division at the moment that I can think of off the top of my head who can challenge Shevchenko at the moment.
Yeah. And, that may be a case of just, being too close to the forest to see the trees, or however that saying goes. There's always been people like this where you don't see them ever losing, Anderson Silva, Ronda Rousey, one of the best examples. And then, all of a sudden somebody comes out of left field that, you weren't even paying attention to,
Yeah.
and dethrones them. But yeah, there's nobody on the radar right now. And she said she wants to fight everybody in the top 10 in this division. I don't even know. I couldn't name more than 5 fighters in this division. I'm watching this stuff every week and reading about it all the time. So who knows? There may be fighters moving up from 115 still. There may be fighters moving down from 135 that we just never thought about or considered. But yeah, for my money, pound for pound, and I absolutely despise that phrase, but pound for pound, one of the best female fighters to ever do it. Went to distance twice with the bantamweight and featherweight champ Amanda Nunes. Even Cyborg couldn't go to the distance with her. So that says a lot in itself. But yeah, who knows what's next for Valentina? I mean, right now she definitely seems unstoppable, and it seems like she's just always at the top of her game. There doesn't seem to be any psychological issues. She's always coming in confident. She's always coming in guns blazing. She's not afraid to take the fight anywhere it needs to go. And you mentioned the grappling piece and how Jessica was so confident in her wrestling. There are a few things that can suck the wind out of you than when you get taken down by somebody and you truly believe that you're the better wrestler, and then they take you down. That's just something in a fight or in a grappling match. That's something that's very hard to overcome psychologically. When you know in your head, I know I'm a better wrestler, and then you get taken down. That's something that breaks guys. And that's something that GSP did to a lot of people. I mean, he took down Division I wrestlers left and right and just tossed them around the cage, and you saw them break in there because of it. So yeah, Valentina Shevchenko is just a freak, man. She's such an incredible talent. And maybe we won't see anybody dethrone her. Maybe she'll just go on an epic championship run and finish her career that way. Maybe she'll try to go back up to 135 and have the trilogy fight with Amanda Nunes, because I really believe those fights were a lot closer than the judges did. I kind of thought she won the first fight.
Yeah.
In any case, a little bit of controversy, and for what was the main event for a lot of people. And I gotta say, Jeff, I was exhausted after this fight, Tony Ferguson and Donald Cowboy Cerrone, just because this card went so late, and I had been driving a lot, and I had been drinking a lot of beer because I only had so much room in my cooler, so I had to I had to put away a few. I had to put away a few strong IPAs I was traveling with, just because I didn't want them to go bad. The Airbnb I was staying in only had a mini fridge. So I had to take all the soda and shit that was in there. The nice people who own this Airbnb stocked it with like Coke and Mountain Dew and seltzer and all stuff that, I appreciate, but I don't drink soda. So I had to take all that out. And I packed this mini fridge to the brim with all the beer I was bringing with me, because my sister and brother-in-law, who went on vacation with us, they brought me down some of my favorite beers from the New York area. So I had all that plus all the beer that I bought on my brewery tours. So yeah, I was very sleepy by the time this fight was over. Interesting matchup. I was saying a couple of weeks ago how when we were breaking this fight down that I don't love Donald Cerrone fighting on such short notice. I feel like that's not when we get the best Cowboy. And when he's loose and friendly with someone he's fighting, that's when he does his best. And that's what it looked like with him and Tony Ferguson. They respect each other. They were laughing. They were goofing around. But Tony Ferguson's not the guy to fight on short notice. There's just, especially after the war that Cowboy went through with Al Iaquinta. Granted, he did more damage, but he was fighting for 25 minutes against a fucking killer. And then 4 weeks later, you're going to get in there with a savage like Tony Ferguson, who's just been stewing in his house and angry about shit going down with his family and breaking down walls because he thinks that there's aliens in there or whatever, or somebody had his walls bugged and stuff. This is not the guy. This is not the guy to fight on 4 weeks notice, especially when you're so close to getting another title shot and not getting any younger. So I didn't like this fight off the bat for Cowboy, but that's not Tony Ferguson's fault that Cowboy signed on the dotted line. He did what he had to do in there. There was a cheap shot at the end of the second round where he got in an extra punch after the bell, and Dan Miragliotta, you know, had some words for Tony Ferguson, and Ferguson kind of brushed him off. And then Cowboy made the cardinal mistake. He's been around long enough to know this. If your nose is broken, you do not blow your nose. And I've had my nose broken a couple of times, and it feels like you have just a bunch of shit in there. But what it is all the cartilage in there, because there's no bones in your nose. All the cartilage is just collapsed on that sinus passage, so there's all air trapped behind it. So when you go to blow your nose, there's nowhere for that pressure to go but up into the cavity behind your eyes, which will, if you don't have swelling around your eyes, it'll make your eyes so bloodshot that you can't even see. And if you already have swelling like Cowboy did, the air will just push all that swelling forward and cause the eye to collapse shut. So Cowboy goes to blow his own nose. We all saw what happened, and then the eye swelled up immediately. And then he was digging his fingers in it, trying to open his eye back up. But that's just not going to work. I mean, that's just biology. And he wanted to continue fighting. I saw some stupid comments like, "Oh, Cowboy blew his nose on purpose because he didn't want to finish the fight." That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Cowboy is a fucking savage. The fact that he even got in there with Tony Ferguson on 4 weeks' notice, makes him a badder motherfucker than 99% of the people on the roster, because most people aren't taking that fight on short notice. They're saying, fuck no, I need a full camp to fight Tony Ferguson. And rightfully so. That's probably the right move. But you can never deny Cowboy's toughness here. I would never think that he would look for a way out like that. Plus, why would you do that? Because that just fucks up your eye and your vision and everything like that. Like, oh, I'm just gonna blow up my eyeball so I don't have to go back out there for this fight. It makes no sense. I would rather fight Tony Ferguson than, I think, blow up my own eye. I do not want to fight Tony Ferguson. That's one of the last guys I want to get in there with. In any case, the actual fight, I thought Tony looked amazing. He was mixing up his strikes so well. He wasn't letting Cowboy get in a rhythm, which is very important because Cowboy is a notoriously slow starter. And Cowboy did start off strong in that first round, but in that second round, these are two guys who both pick up momentum as the fight goes on, and Tony got there first, plain and simple. He was able to get in a rhythm quicker than Cowboy, and he was piecing them up. Very creative striking, nothing we're not used to, but man, he looked fucking good in there. And the next fight for him has to be the winner of Khabib and Poirier, but let's not go there just yet. Give me your thoughts on the actual fight, Jeff.
Yeah, dude. I thought that Tony Ferguson looked a little bit rusty in that first round, and it was totally different in the second round. He came out throwing elbows from weird angles, using leg kicks really well to slow down Donald Cerrone, because we know that Cerrone himself, part of his game plan is leg kicks. So Tony Ferguson just put on the pressure, and like you said, Cerrone couldn't get going. And Bill, I don't think that it was a sucker punch at the end of that second round. I just think that Tony, he hasn't fought in over a year. So to me, I think he kind of just, maybe just forgot, maybe didn't hear the bell. And I think part of the blame is on Dan Miragliotta. I think you should have been right there to get in between the fighters once that bell rang. So I don't think it was a cheap shot. I don't think he did it on purpose. I think, like you said, in the build up to this, he was very emotional. And so I think he kind of was just maybe seeing red for a sec and, didn't realize. But I mean, I think he was being sincere in his apologies to Cerrone. And, dude, but these guys are just so tough, man. Like you said, Donald Cerrone, he wanted to keep fighting, even with one eye. He was ready to get back in there. And even before he blew his nose, his eye was already swelling. I think Ferguson had done a lot of damage. And dude, once he blew his nose, you could see it on the camera. As soon as like he finished and moved his hand, his eye just closed. You know,
Yeah.
he wasn't seeing anything after that. And Bill, this is the second fight in a row where someone has not come to answer for the third bell. I mean, for the third round. It's a little scary. I think that this Tony Ferguson, who is patient, who, is picking his shots, I think he's a scary dude.
Yeah.
Um, what's his name? Anthony Pettis couldn't answer for the third round. Now Donald Cerrone. Um, Kevin Lee was finished early. So I think there's a very dangerous Tony Ferguson. And I can't wait to see him back in there a little bit more. I can't wait to see him take on the winner of Poirier and Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think that either one of those fights is going to be a war.
Yeah, for sure. And Tony Ferguson, the scariest thing about him is he doesn't necessarily intend to finish fights. He goes out there to punish you for 15 minutes or 25 minutes or however long that fight is going to be. And if you can't hang anymore, fine. But he's prepared to go the distance and just beat the fuck out of you for as long as it takes. And that's something that him and Khabib have in common, because Khabib has said in the past he's chosen not to finish guys just so he can make them suffer in there. And those are the scariest guys to fight. Those are the guys you do not want to be in there with. And that's why I still really want to see that Tony Ferguson Khabib fight. I mean, I just feel like it's not written in the stars. It's not meant to be, or whatever the case. But that doesn't make me want it any less, Jeff. You know, it's like that celebrity crush, you're never going to meet, but, can't, you can't help but wonder what it would be like.
Yeah.
Let's we got a lot to talk about, so I want to kind of breeze over the rest of this with a couple of highlights. Blagoy Ivanov and Tai Tuivasa. This fight was okay. I think some people thought it was controversial. I thought it was a clear win for Blagoy Ivanov. I didn't see any fight left in Tai Tuivasa after halfway through the second round, when Blagoy Ivanov was just making him carry his weight. And that nasty front headlock. And Tai Tuivasa even tapped at the end of the second round. But that was after the bell. I don't know if he heard the bell or whatever the case. Maybe it is because the bell sounds in English. And
what? The bell sounds in English. Oh man.
In any case, Tatiana Suarez, very dominant over Nina Ansaroff, even though it looked like she did get a little bit tired in that third round. And Nina Ansaroff almost had a comeback in that third round. I'm still really high on Tatiana Suarez. I think her wrestling ability is just phenomenal. The way she chains her takedowns together is really, it's a work of art to watch. And a lot of people have been trying to compare her to Khabib, and then people say, "Oh, well, you better take the Khabib nickname away now." I don't think that's a necessary comparison to make. You're comparing American wrestling to Sambo, and she just comes from such a great wrestling pedigree. And I thought she looked phenomenal in those first two rounds. And yeah, she might have gotten a little bit tired, but she's a big girl for that weight class too, and she's the one who we may see move up to challenge Valentina one day, because she's still grown into her body here. So I would expect her to go up to 125 eventually. Alexa Grasso looked great against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who really just hasn't been herself, especially since that nasty knockout she took at the hands of the strawweight champ Jessica Andrade. Calvin Kattar with a nice knockout over Ricardo Lamas. And Lamas is a guy who I think just needs some time off. A couple of real bad knockouts and a couple of wars he's been in, and he's just been at this for so long. If he's going to keep going, I would really like to see him take a significant amount of time off. I'm a big fan of Ricardo Lamas. I think he's one of the toughest, grittiest dudes around. He's a real old school gritty fighter, but he's been taking a lot of damage from all these knockouts. Xiaonan Yan with the win over Angela Hill. I think she set the record for most tit kicks in a fight. She was she just kept kicking Angela Hill in the tits. It was it was an interesting strategy. But yeah, she looked good, and this was, like I said 2 weeks ago, this was a quick turnaround for Angela Hill as well, because she just fought like a month and a half ago in Fort Lauderdale. And she's another one who every time she gets a little bit of momentum, she seems to slip back. I would like to see her take some more time off in between fights because she's a very skilled fighter. Darren Stewart and Bevon Lewis, meh. Eddie Wineland, vintage Eddie Wineland, taking the steam out of Gregory Popov, who's a highly touted prospect, very accomplished Muay Thai fighter. And, like I said, vintage Eddie Wineland. He hasn't been in there in a couple of years, and he got in there, got the knockout in the second round. And then a pretty impressive win of Caitlin Chukagian over Joanne Calderwood. Some people were saying maybe Chukagian, someone who could challenge for that flyweight title eventually. She's going to need some. We're going to need to see how she does against some stiffer competition first, but who knows? It's possible. She's a good fighter. Anything that I kind of breezed over there pique your interest, Jeff?
Yeah, just that Calvin Kattar knockout, man. Ricardo Lamas, always a game opponent, a very, very well-rounded fighter, and Calvin Kattar was able to wear him down and finish him off with a nice 1-2. Good for Calvin Kattar. We've talked about him too. He's a very, very good striker. But like I said, Bill, overall, I think this card really, really delivered. Very few boring fights on this card. And I'm with you. I was kind of getting tired after that Ferguson Cerrone fight. It was already like 11:30. It was an emotional roller coaster, that fight.
Yeah. And then I had like an adrenaline shock from the Valentina Shevchenko fight. I was planning to go to sleep. But I was like, all right, let me watch the beginning of this Valentina fight. And I was like, man, she's just dominating this chick. And I was like, she's probably gonna finish her in the second round. Let me watch. And then I was awake. So then I watched the Henry Cejudo fight. So if it wasn't for Valentina, I probably would have just watched that the next day or checked out the highlights or something. All right, you ready to move on to cover Fight Night 153 here, Jeff?
Yep, absolutely. So,
all right,
where was this one again?
This was in Stockholm, Sweden. And I had said on the show 2 weeks ago, I don't know if anybody recalls, if you're going to put your money on somebody, put it on Anthony Smith, just because of all the variables. Now, I didn't see it ending the way that it did. I did think that Gustafsson would have had a grappling advantage, but Anthony Smith proved me wrong. But like I said, all the pressure of fighting at home seems to usually get to Alexander Gustafsson. And you could just kind of tell he wasn't all there. He wasn't totally focused on what he needed to do. He had his moments where he looked good in his main event fight, but he had other moments where he just looked like he didn't want to be in there. And almost like he was looking for a way out, and Anthony Smith gave it to him. So it was Gustafsson who went for the takedown in that fourth round, and it resulted in a scramble where Anthony Smith got on Gustafsson's back, and he did a great job. He was riding really high, and he was able to just break down Gustafsson's hips and flatten him out. And he was able to get the choke. It was an awesome finish from Anthony Smith. I guess he's gotten some better corner advice since his last fight with John Jones, where he was told, you just got to be you out there. If you're not you can't win. And if you can't win, then you're gonna lose. Whatever he said. I think I'm paraphrasing, but I also think it's pretty accurate. So yeah, he chokes him out in front of his hometown, and then he lays down the gloves, says the show's over. Gustafsson's a guy who came so close, but never quite reached the finish line when it comes to realizing a championship in his career. And I'm sure that will be his biggest regret going forward. But obviously we wish him the best. If you don't want to do this anymore, this is not something, this is not like being an accountant where it's like, oh, I have 5 more years till my retirement, but I don't really want to do this anymore. You could stick that out. Just shut up and do your job and use your vacation time and whatever. Steal office supplies, whatever makes you feel better about being at that job. But if you're a cage fighter and you don't want to be in there anymore, just don't do it because it's dangerous. You're threatening the quality of life you're going to have after this. So if you're doubting your abilities, or you're doubting your desire or your hunger to be in that cage, then don't be in that cage. And that's the advice I would give to anybody having doubts about doing this sport. So give me your thoughts on the fight, Jeff, and the retirement of Alexander Gustafsson, who I know is one of your favorite fighters.
Yeah, so Gustafsson started off really, really well. I'd say rounds 1 and 2 is looking really good. And then Anthony Smith just turned it up and never slowed down after that. He made it, Smith was able to make it into a brawl. He was able to get into Gustafsson's face. He didn't, he didn't fall into Gustafsson's boxing. He actually was making Alexander Gustafsson come after him, Anthony Smith. And Anthony Smith was doing a really good job with his counter striking, which is a little unusual. Usually we see Gustafsson doing the countering. And I think Anthony Smith did a really good job of making Gustafsson play his game. And honestly, Bill, in those last 2 rounds, it kind of looked to me like maybe Gustafsson had kind of planned to retire no matter what the outcome of this fight was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jones, it's not looking like he's going anywhere. Gustafsson's already had 2 shots at him. Smith didn't beat him, but Smith still kind of has something to prove. But yeah, dude, I think Gustafsson is making the best decision for himself at the moment. I don't think he loses any stock. I think, for a long time, he's been one of my favorite fighters. I think the way he's been able to just add to his repertoire over the years has just been so impressive to me. He's the definition of a mixed martial artist. When he lost to Phil Davis and he got tapped out, he realized that there were holes in his game, and he said, Phil Davis, can I come train with you? And they became good friends. Gustafsson's wrestling has become really, really top notch in the last couple of years. His submission game as well. So, if this is the last time we see Gustafsson, I just want to thank him as a huge fan of his. To this day, I still believe he beat John Jones in that first fight. But yeah, dude, it's been a great ride watching him fight. But Bill, remember that head kick that we talked about with Valentina Shevchenko? Well, I feel like Jimi Manuwa. Oh God, I was concerned, Bill, because this dude Aleksandar Rakic. I didn't know anything about him, but in the first round against Jimi Manuwa, he just comes out swinging. He comes out really explosive, gets in Jimi Manuwa's face, and hits this right hand, and then switches into a left head kick. And Manuwa, not only was the knockout bad, Bill, but he landed on the canvas hard. I was really concerned that he was going to be visiting Concussion City, dude.
Yeah, it was bad. And Jimi Manuwa, who is a boxer by trade, had his hands set up perfectly to parry a punch. If it were just a punch that came his way, he would have been fine because his hands were out a little bit far from his face, and he would have been able to knock out a punch that was coming from far away. But unfortunately, his hands were too far away from his face to defend the kick that came up and over the top and put him to sleep. And back-to-back finishes in the co-main event and the co-and main event, and back-to-back retirements because Jimi Manuwa announced his retirement the next day. And I think that's a good thing because here's a guy who, he was able to come in, from the boxing world and knock a lot of guys out on his rise to the top of what was basically a very empty division, except for, the top guys, Gustafsson, Jones, and DC. But now you got a division of killers. There's we had been saying for the past 2 years or so on this show anyway how empty that light heavyweight division was, but now you got guys coming off the Contender Series. You have guys like Rakic, you have guys like Johnny Walker, you have guys like Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith who moved up in weight to be part of this division, and now it's getting pretty stacked and pretty competitive. You got guys like Khalil Roundtree who are looking amazing lately. So yeah, that might be a fun fight, Alexander Rakic and Khalil Roundtree. I think that's something I'd like to see. But yeah, as far as Jimi Manuwa, I mean, he's taken some pretty bad knockouts. So the right decision here to lay it down, I think. He put on a lot of really fun fights. His fight with Thiago Santos was one of the craziest first rounds ever. And he just came, he put Santos down a couple of times. He got put down a couple of times, and then he just got, he just wound up taking the harder shots. So he's taking a lot of damage in his last couple of fights. So probably the right move to lay it down. Any other thoughts on this one, Jeff?
No, I don't think this fight was long enough for me to have any other thoughts on it, Bill. 47 seconds.
Fair. All right. Makwan Amirkhani getting the anaconda choke over Chris Fishgold. It was a very slick submission. These two had a very entertaining first round. It was so back and forth where like they just kept butting heads and very back and forth with the grappling. Both good grapplers, but Amirkhani coming away with the anaconda choke. And then I don't know, is there anything else on this card you want to talk about, Jeff? I'm just kind of looking up and down. Leonardo Santos had an impressive knockout of Stevie Ray. And Frank Camacho knocked out Nick Hine in the second round. That was a good one. I don't know. What else you got, kid?
I'll be honest with you, Bill. This fight really didn't do it for me. I mean, this card. Yeah. I mean, there were some nice knockouts, but I just couldn't get into it.
Yep. All right. Well, it's been a pretty long one, so maybe we'll call it here. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No, just it's Monday night. Sorry that we're a little bit late, everybody. But we'll see you guys later in the week for Bill's breakdown of some of the awesome breweries and distilleries that he checked out. And hope everybody has an awesome week. And summer starts, I think this weekend or next week or something. So, everybody head to the beach on a Saturday or something.
Yeah, man. One last thing I'll throw in here. Friday night is Bellator 222. And this is a pretty solid card, actually. I'm looking at it. Main event, Rory McDonald and Neiman Gracie, part of that welterweight tournament. Co-main event, the American Gangster, Chael Sonnen and Lyoto Machida. That should be a fun fight. I'll always tune in for old Chael. Dylan Dennis is fighting some chump. Here's a really fun fight. Bantamweights, Ricky Bandejas and Patrick Mix. You should definitely check this one out. Patrick Mix 10-0 against Ricky Bandejas, who walked away from his championship in another division to take a fight he was supposed to lose against Gallagher, the Irish kid, and came in and knocked him out. Really, really tough fighter. Eduardo Dantas and Juan Archuleta. That's a fun fight. Darian Caldwell and Kyoji Horiguchi in a rematch, I believe, because Caldwell went over to Japan to fight Horiguchi in Rizin, and now Rizin's coming back to fight Caldwell in Bellator. You got Aaron Pico against the undefeated Aaron Borix. Heather Hardy's fighting on this card. What else we got? And then we got the Manimal, John Beneducci, who is part of one of my favorite MMA podcasts, MMA and Beyond, with Steve Maraboli and Ray Longo. Manimal is fighting on the undercard of this event, Bellator 222 at Madison Square Garden. Longtime New Yorker, really proud to be fighting at the Garden. So I'll be tuning in to watch Manimal go to work against Kenny Rivera on the prelims here from Bellator 222. This is actually a really good card. I'm definitely going to check this one out. I don't think I have anything going on Friday night anyway. If this is on DAZN, I'm going to have to find another way to watch it. Hopefully it's on TV somewhere. All right. So I will have another episode coming, maybe this week, maybe next week, where I will do the craft brewery tour breakdown for you guys. I'll let you know what my top breweries were and some of the best beers that I drank. And if you're not into the alcohol talk, then just don't download the episode or do download it and just don't listen to it, because that helps our numbers. And the other thing that helps us out is please leave us a review, because that helps people find the show and spread the good word of MMA on the Rocks. If you want to get a hold of Jeff, it's at @animal_Wilson on Twitter and on Instagram. And you guys know how to get a hold of me. It's at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can send me an email, MMAonTheRocks@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, MMAonTheRocks.com. I've been slacking with the weekly articles, but I plan on getting back to that soon. And I'm going to be starting a craft beer blog, I decided, on there as well. So if you're into the brews and stuff like that, check out the website. All right, that's it. I'm gonna try and take down the rest of this sour ale, and might have to wash it down with a little bit more bourbon. But that's all we got. Thanks for being patient with us, being away on vacation, but now I'm refreshed, ready to go. We'll get back on schedule. We'll be back next Sunday or maybe sooner. But until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye.